Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're about to react to Three Father Knows Horror Stories Animated by Dark Knights. I forgot for a minute. Are y'all ready? Let's get it.
I'm a 25-year-old male.
Yo, Dark Knights, you should probably like put your channel or something like in a corner or something so they can know it's you. But I'm already sub.
This happened to me back in 2012. I was pretty oblivious to a lot of things at that age and always tended to give people the benefit of the doubt, which I do much less nowadays. So I was having trouble finding direction after graduation from college, jumping from job to job and getting more and more discontent with how my life was going when I came across a post on a popular social media site that was advertising that they were looking for young people to do seasonal work in the U.S. I had nothing to lose, I thought, and the money to be made sounded promising. It would be an opportunity also to have an adventure. So I contacted them and got the process going, but was still unsure of taking that step. My current boss was self-centered. One morning, soon after we'd had a particularly bad falling out, which resulted in me calling him a lot of four-letter expletives, and walking off the job, literally tearing my uniform shirt off and throwing it on the floor. That was the sign I needed to jump at the opportunity to go on the trip I'd planned. I got the job offer from a farmer in rural central northern Idaho within the week. And about 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to Salt Lake City. Then I was on a 7-hour-plus bus trip to the farm. After a few hiccups, a delayed flight, and a bit of stress, I finally got there. The 8 months went by flawlessly, and I had an amazing time. I had a great employer, was making lots of friends, and was able to see so many awesome sights. However, this event started to unfold about 2 weeks before I was due to return to my home country in late November. Temperatures were below freezing already on most days, and snow was sticking to the ground. I arrived home on a Friday evening at about midnight after watching movies at a friend's place. I was a pretty serious night owl at that age and could function on 3 to 4 hours of sleep for months on end without problems. I called my parents around that time too because of the time difference, so it was around midday back home. I talked for about an hour or so with them until we hung up. When I did, I had a vehicle drive up our shared driveway. So the layout of our apartment block was as follows: 2 blocks of 4 units each, 2 on the ground floor and 2 on the first floor. So 8 in total. We had a shared driveway with all units facing it, and 1 parking space for each unit next to each other right in front of the bottom unit. I lived in number 4, which was the right-hand side top unit in the first block, and the crate this story is about lives in the 6th, which was the bottom right-hand unit in the second block, and his name is Corey. The way my unit was laid out, I would have a full view of the whole driveway and all car parking spaces into the street. Unfortunately, there was very little light in the parking areas as the street lights didn't reach down the driveway. But now back to my story. I peeked out of my front window and saw it was the guy from number 6 coming home, as I recognized his truck and him, as well as his stocky build beard and shaved head. I could hear he was mad and probably drunk because he was bellowing some nonsense and shouting something towards his girlfriend who was getting out of the passenger side. He started kicking and punching some of the vehicles in the parking area, knocking the window out of an F-150 and breaking down the railing from the stairs leading to the second floor units. He went on like this for about 15 minutes with his vandalism and violent outbursts before his girlfriend herded him inside.
Damn, what kind of neighbor are you?
Nothing
You ain't say nothing?
So I got into bed as I had to work the next morning. When I got home about 5 p.m. that Saturday evening, there was a police cruiser in the driveway. I went up to my unit, and a while later there was a knock on my door. I opened it up, and it was the officers. They asked if I'd seen anything the previous night with regards to the property damage outside. Now, my normal consensus would be to stay out of anything that doesn't affect me personally. But I didn't want to lie to the police in a foreign country and risk getting in trouble myself. So I gave a vague and short description of what I'd witnessed, making sure not to directly point to the guy in number 6. I just said it was a guy with a shaved head. Then they thanked me and went on their way. The following Tuesday morning, I got a loud knocking on my door again. As I peeked out of the front window, I saw the guy from number 6, Quarry, pacing on my porch and shouting to open up as he knew I was inside. I became cold, immediately thinking, uh-oh,
You need a
now I'm
gun,
gonna
brother.
get beaten up. Then about 5 minutes later, my employer pulled up and the guy stormed off. I got to work feeling terrified the whole day. I considered contacting the police officer that took my statement, but decided against it as I didn't want to cause any more trouble. I got home pretty late that evening.
Oh, you done messed up.
I saw Corey's girlfriend walk over and knock on my door.
Oh
I
boy.
opened up and she asked if she could have a chat.
No.
I said sure and stepped outside, where she explained that he was on probation, so any incidents would cause him to go back to jail. I said to her that he shouldn't have acted out and vandalized people's property then. After a bit of back and forth between us, I gave her a copy of the statement I had, showing that I hadn't implied him directly, only giving a general description, saying it was dark and I couldn't see much, and that put her a bit at ease. I told her I would retract the statement and said I was sleepy and unsure of what I saw, so he would stay away from me. She said she would talk to him.
Oh, that ain't
A couple of
good.
hours later, I get another knock on my door,
It's him.
and it was the
Oh, it's
girlfriend
her
again.
again. Okay.
Corey stood at the bottom of the stairs. She said he wanted to apologize.
Nah, I'm good.
I went outside and saw my neighbor on his porch. I felt pretty apprehensive now, as this was the first time I'd laid eyes on the guy. He was big, about 6 feet and 250 pounds. He was a bodybuilder type with swastika tattoos on the visible parts of his arm. I shook his hand and we had a lighthearted conversation on my porch, with him apologizing. He offered me his cell number and took mine, saying if I ever wanted to hang out, I should text him. I thanked him and they walked off. I decided to never contact him, as I don't like associating with extremists. Fast forward to Friday, when I only work half a day. As I got back to my apartment, Corey and his girlfriend drove in. We greeted each other, and they invited me to go out with them for dinner.
Hell
I
no.
declined, but they insisted, so I eventually gave in and agreed. They said we could all drive together, so I met up at 3, but it was only him.
Hell no.
He
I'm
said his
going
girlfriend
by
didn't feel
myself.
So I got in his truck and we drove down to the local Mexican restaurant. Initially, we had a good conversation, but then it started to die down. We finished eating, paid, and walked out. I wanted to walk the 3/4 mile home, but he insisted I get in a truck with him.
And get in the
we were
truck
both
so
going
I
the same
can
way.
take
I
you
felt
to see
uneasy about
something.
it, but I got in, and we drove out of the parking lot. But he turned the opposite way of going home.
Yeah, I bet he
I asked him,
did.
where were we going?
To
He said
show
he
you
wanted to show
something.
me something. I asked what it was, and he said it was always where they went snowboarding when they were in school. All this was said in a monotone voice without making eye contact, which made me feel more uneasy, even teetering towards being scared. Now, I'm not a small guy at 6'2" and about 220 pounds, but I physically have no chance against Corey. We drove out of town and toward the mountains when he drove off the asphalt road and onto a gravel one that led up into the mountains. I became more freaked out. After about a 30 to 40 minute drive, he stopped in the middle of the road. It was starting to get dark out now, and I hadn't had cell service for the past 20 minutes. He got out and took out a hunting rifle from behind the seat and then said something for the first time since we left dinner, except for answering my questions about where we were going. In that same monotone voice, without making eye contact, he said, "Now we go hunting." I was terrified at that point and said I would wait for him in the truck. But he looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw his eyes. They were dark dial-eyed, and I could see the hate deep within them. He barked, "Get out!" So I did, so slowly, with my phone in my hand, looking for nearby trees that I could run to, anything I could use for cover.
Bro, 911 should have been already on the way on your
As I started
phone.
walking around the
Why you
truck,
waiting?
my phone rang. He ripped me out of my daze. I was at that moment wondering how the hell I had cell phone reception up there. I looked at the screen, and it was one of my friends calling. I answered. Her voice was the most beautiful sound I ever heard. I immediately told her where I was and with who, and she asked me if everything was okay. I told her that if she doesn't hear from me again in the next 30 minutes, then she should call the police. The call began to break up, so I repeated what I said to her again, and to tell the police what I just told her. The call finally cut out, and I looked at Corey. His eyes were shooting daggers at me. He was red in the face, and he looked like he was about to burst an artery in his head. I told him to take me home, turn around, and get back in his truck. So he put the rifle away, got in, and drove like a madman back. For the whole ride, he didn't say a word or make any eye contact. When we arrived at the apartment complex where we lived, he stopped in the street, but didn't turn into the driveway.
I
jumped out before the truck even came to a complete stop and saw my friend's car parked in my spot since I didn't have a car at the time. She came running towards me as soon as she saw me. We went into my apartment where I explained what had happened. She went wide, and when I told her who the guy was, she told me to pack my bags and to come stay with her and her family. So I did just that. When we got to her house, her dad asked if I was okay. She'd filled them in after the phone call. I explained it all again, and her dad asked me who the guy was. I said his name and gave a description. Her dad got a somber look on his face then, and explained that I had been very lucky. He said we should contact the police immediately and give a statement. Also, because he was on probation or parole, unsure of which one, that it was illegal for him to possess a firearm. I called the officer that took my initial statement, then who later came by the house. He was friends with my friend's dad, and I gave another statement. I flew back to my home country a week later. I'd stayed with my friend and her family for that week, as work was just about done and they were having Thanksgiving.
Well, you got a good friend on your hands.
Then, the Sunday after the event, her dad and I were making a roast in the barbecue grill in the garage when he filled me in a bit more about Corey. He'd been to school with him, and since then, Corey had been a bad seed, dealing drugs, getting into fights, and just being a generally unproductive waste of a human being and a burden to society. His first stint in jail was just after age 18 when he got caught with more than a pound of weed in his possession.
That's about
He
right.
got 3 years for it, as it was his first offense. But the second stint was shortly after he got out. A nature conservation
usually how
officer
it
found
goes.
him hunting illegally. When he confronted him, Corey flipped and beat the officer half to death. That got him 10 years, but his stay was extended. For how long, I'm not sure, because he shanked a couple of inmates and jumped in and assaulted a prison guard. He also told me that the police picked up Corey on Friday night and found him with the loaded rifle in his truck. He was promptly arrested, as it was a violation of his probation. Our interaction took place a few months after he'd gotten out the second time, and her father said there were rumors of him shooting a rival dealer in a city close by, but nothing could be proven. He was also a proud member of the white supremacist. I saw his girlfriend the night before I flew back at the grocery Subway. The look she gave me was one of pure hate and anger.
Man, fuck
I
you.
still wonder if she was in on the plan or knew what he was planning to do. I lost contact with my friend and haven't been back there since, and I don't plan to either. I've had enough of redneck neo-Nazis. So Corey, maybe you just wanted to take me on a hunting trip and I overreacted. But with your history of violence, I highly doubt it. If you had premeditated plans to take me out in the forest and hunt me like prey, for that, I hope you rot in prison.
You knew that was what it
Society
was.
is a better place without you roaming around freely.
Hey guys, thanks so
You
much.
knew he was
for all
gonna.
this
He's gonna be
support.
like,
If you
run,
haven't subscribed
and
to the
then I'm
channel
gonna
yet,
shoot at you.
Please feel free to do
We're gonna
so.
see who lives throughout this night.
The single most messed up memory from my childhood involves dictaphones. You know those little voice recorder things with little tiny tapes?
I ain't know what those
Yeah.
was called.
I used to think they were so cute. Now they trigger me super hard.
Super hard, huh?
Before y'all call me a snowflake or whatever, listen to my story. When I was around 11 years old, 5th grade anyway, I went to sleep over at a friend's house.
11.
We
Wow.
stayed up late, doing all the stuff you'd expect young ladies to get up to at a sleepover. Then we all passed out and slept through the night. The next morning, the girl whose house it was, her dad comes into the kitchen with a little dictaphone in his hand. He's got a big smile on his face and right in front of us, he starts playing the tape back. We all hear our own voices, talking about our crushes and all this other stuff. He'd been recording us.
What kind of dad is that?
He'd hidden the recorder in one of her stuffies or something. I'm honestly kind of freaked out by this, but I'm too shy to actually call him out on it, so we all just sort of let it go and chalk it up to a weird dad behavior. Years later, the girl and her weird dad move away and we all lose contact as we go our separate ways. Then, about 14 years later, the girl finds me on Facebook. We do a little small talk, catching up on this and that, and then the girl drops something heavy on me. She asks if, during that sleepover, all those years back, if I remember anything weird involving her dad. I'm all like, sure, he recorded us. That was incredibly weird. A little bit of a total invasion of privacy, maybe? She's like, no. Anything else? I had to tell her no because honestly, nothing else did happen. But the question sparked off a little online reunion, with all the girls who had social media getting in touch with one another because we'd all been asked the same question. It took a while for the truth to come out, but to our horror, we discovered that the girl had been getting abused by her father. The whole idea of recording our conversations that night wasn't part of some kooky prank or whatever. It was him making sure she didn't say anything about it to her friends. Of all the darker, scarier incidents from my childhood, that one takes the cake.
That's messed up. That's
Not
a
so much because
horrible
of how
father.
horrible it is, and it is horrible, but because of how he basically gloated to us, playing it back because he knew she didn't say a freaking thing about it. I think he escaped justice in the end. I'm not even sure she started investigating, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, until he was long gone. She's doing fine, by the way, but I still think about her from time to time and hope she really is doing okay, as she says she is.
But she's still alive, low key. That sounds like something you probably do something regrettable out here. That was a bad story to end off. If you see your friend in that type of situation, intervene, please. Tell somebody about it. But that's it. That's my reaction to it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm out. Peace.